This is Alexandra Palace. Situated high on Muswell Hill in North London, it was selected as the site for broadcasting the world's first regular television service from 1936. In the Second World War, the palace housed Belgian refugees, while the television transmitter was used to jam the navigation systems of Luftwaffe bombers. The palace took 2 years to build, and used 15 million bricks. In this series, I've been recreating it at a somewhat smaller scale, using around 13,000 pieces of Lego. Last time we completed the East Colonnade, containing the old British Broadcasting Corporation transmitter hall. And now we're onto the final section of the palace, the East Tower. As with the rest of the East Wing, this was originally a mirror of the West Tower, but was transformed completely by the addition of the BBC offices and the 65-metre transmission mast, a jarring departure from the Victorian-era Italian-inspired architecture of the rest of the building. The differences from the West Tower run all the way from ground level, starting with a slightly more complex base to provide the steps up to the front entrance of the BBC studios. The relatively plain doors here are constructed just with transparent bricks and brown plates and tiles. All the white bricks here will form the base of the more modern additions to the building that house the BBC offices. Either side of these, on the ground floor, are some of the same intricate arrow-slit constructions that we saw on the West Tower, with the addition of a couple of 1x1 tiles to represent some historical plaques either side of the entrance. Moving on to the first floor, I'm using some angled plates to form the base of the upper floor offices. The more modern windows in this section of the building are, unlike most of the rest of the model, represented with actual Lego window pieces, with black tiles behind them to obscure the interior. I'm using hinged pieces to set the correct angles of the walls for this section, then repeating the whole thing 5 times to provide the full frontage of the offices. These are then all linked together into a single assembly using long plate pieces, with these slope pieces providing the correct angle to fit in with the surrounding tower. The whole thing attaches to the model at the bottom, but isn't very stable on its own, and will require more of the overall structure in place to support it. The interface between this section and the surrounding older style brickwork requires a tricky quarter-stud offset, created using headlight bricks, then built up following a similar design to the corresponding sections of the West Tower, with a few small modifications. The most noticeable difference is the use of sand green components to represent the oxidised copper that appears throughout this tower. This whole construction is quite fragile, with no real connection between the older walls and the more modern section. So the wall hook here is even more important, providing some much needed interlocking structure, linked into the front of the building via pins, Technic bricks and plates. This section of the model is probably where I did the least planning out of internal structure in the digital design in LEGO Studio, just doing the bare minimum to position pieces in the right place visually. So it required quite a bit of improvisation as I went along to give it some more solidity. The slightly more ornate sections towards the top of the building are very similar to the West Tower, which you'll see me using for reference during some of the build here, using outward-facing headlight bricks and brackets covered with plates and tiles to represent the decorative brickwork. Again, with the introduction of a few sand green pieces to represent the areas of oxidised copper plating on this tower. There's some further improvisation here to ensure I've got sufficient support in place for these upper sections to attach to the rest of the structure. This took a few attempts at rebuilding to get something that worked and fit together with the office frontage. Again, with some reference to the West Tower, which itself had needed some improvisation beyond the digital design at this stage. Because of the awkward angle between the white office section and the tan brick sections, there aren't really any connections between them, which means that the whole office frontage is only attached in a couple of places, making the whole structure quite unstable, as you'll see in a moment. After a small amount of swearing and quite a lot of carefully putting everything back together, the upper sections are topped out and extended out at the back with some angled pieces to support the office section from behind, before finally being joined together with some sturdier bricks and plates to give the whole model some much needed structural integrity. Here there's another slightly awkward interface to connect the top of the office section with its circular balcony to the rear of the model, again requiring some trial and error to fit all the angles together and get all the different sections correctly positioned relative to each other. Similar to the floors below, I'm using hinges to create the angles for the office walls, and here I'm infilling the gap between them using small double slope pieces. After a lot more fiddly building with hinges and small plates of different shapes and sizes, I can finally put the roof in place and connect the two sections together, before attaching the transmitter mast we built back in the first episode. The mast itself still needs a little more work here. The main structure is all done, but it should be covered with lots of small dishes and antennae, which I'm creating here using lots of bars, clips, levers and other Lego greeblies in a variety of combinations. With that done, I called the model complete. However, after my first attempt transporting it to an event, while it did all hold together quite well, this section still felt very fragile, with that office frontage still only attached to the rest of the model at a few points at the top and bottom. So I dismantled everything and modified one of the middle floors to insert an additional cross piece, linking to the Technic frame of the wall hook at the back of the model via an axle piece, providing more support and overall rigidity. After putting this all back together, the model felt appreciably more secure. And with that, the overall model is complete. If you've been watching the whole series, thank you for sticking with it, and for bearing with me getting around to editing these videos. To finish, here's some footage of the whole model being put together, at its first outing to a LEGO exhibition, and in its more permanent home, making use of those hooks at the rear to invisibly mount it to the wall. The finishing touch for display purposes is adding a battery pack along with a paper-thin electroluminescent sheet to illuminate that centerpiece stained glass rose window. I'll be revisiting the rose window again at a larger scale in some future videos, but for now, thank you for watching and happy building.